just talked anyhow to Malcolm Hendry Aged Care Association about what they want and what they perceive for the incoming government's the problem. And it doesn't matter which sector you're talking to at the moment, the problem is a lack of money. There isn't a sector that isn't talking to the government at the moment, from education to health to aged care to transport. Wakatahi, for example, going through a bit of a freeze at the moment, going, oh God, have we got the money? Oh no, let's stop that. There isn't a sector that the answer to them seems to be more money. But local government sector also is in something of a to-do. Anybody who owns any form of property in this country, whether it's residential, commercial or rural, will know that they have been set with rates demands over the last 5 to 10 years that, I was going to say, have far outstripped inflation. Dear Lord, they've far outstripped anything. They're double digit in some cases, particularly down in my neck of the woods, I have to say, where we're shocking. Up to 40% rate increase in a year. Try living with that. Surprised it wasn't an insurrection, but there wasn't. But the future of local government is being discussed, and the last government said, do you know what, we don't trust local government. And to be fair, central government's never trusted local government, which is why they impose new policy statements and regulations and legislation on a relatively regular basis, and it got to be really extreme under the last Labour government. But nevertheless, this caused local government New Zealand to look at itself and said, are we fit for purpose? That question continues. And also from a regional council perspective, these strange beasts that are a sort of third tier of government after central government, then you've got your district and your local and your city councils, and then you've got these regional councils. They were doing a lot of work in the environment space as well, and some of that, and a good deal of that, would seem to be endangered at the moment too, specifically through a lack of funding. To talk to us through both these issues and what they hope to see this new government do, which will have change because change is inevitable, is the chairman of ECAN, or the Canterbury Westland Regional Council, Peter Scott, and he joins us now. Peter, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome, Michael.
Mate, first things first, let's go to local government, because it's been a change in government. As I said right there, this was a very activist last government we had, who were in our space, local government space, both regional, city, district, etc., on a regular basis, and it was something of a revolution underway. What do you anticipate over the next 3 years from this incoming government?
I'm hopeful, Michael. I hope that we have better engagement. I think the thing that we're missing here, and the money is really important. I mean, we're going to have some really staggering draft budgets or LTPs going forward will be double digit and even high 20s possibly, and that's just a symptom of what we're going through at the moment in terms of a lack of money. So that lack of money is there. We get to spend possibly 10% of the rates and taxes in New Zealand as a local government sector, and that's probably not enough to do the job. The last 6 years, the impost upon us in terms of the things that we have to turn up and do in terms of freshwater management, and every time we change a rule or put an MPS out, it affects our consenting process, and that costs more money, it costs more time. So when you're applying for a consent, it's going to cost you more money. So that it's regulatory funk that we're going through, Michael, and I would just hope that the conversations that we may be able to have with an incoming government may shape it better in terms of trying to take some of that complexity out of what we have to do.
It's a very fair point you make. I like the phrase you've just used, regulatory funk, because it seems that every year, every month, regional, district, city councils have new regulations, new requirements from central government to enforce. Is that a symptom that local government isn't doing its job properly? Or is that just that we have micromanagement coming out of Wellington for every aspect of New Zealand society?
I think a lot of it is based around, central knows best, and that's the way we're going to control things. So I'm not saying that we should go away from a centralised system at all, because that also gives you some ownership in terms of the issues you have to do. But we're finding that we're the ones that know our communities. We're the people that represent them. We know what they need, and we know what needs to be done, and we're looking forward to having solid conversations with people. But when we then do that and people ignore us and throw a blanket over the country with rules that aren't going to work, it becomes very difficult. Now, we have to react to those, as you well know, and that, the statutory requirement that we have is increasing, and we're not getting any further ahead in terms of results, I don't think, anyway. And we, especially in Canterbury, we think that, the 27,000 consents that we have, if we end up with 35,000 consents or 45,000 consents, it doesn't get us any further ahead. Our communities are prepared to step forward and take the actions that are required. Now, I think one of the things that we need to trust our communities, Michael, a lot more than what we have been doing.
Well, and that's as you're just talking, I was thinking, God, that's a lot of consents, because you don't just have to process the consents, then you've got to, in actual fact, police them as well.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's a huge bureaucracy for every aspect of rural and regional life. And the question you always ask, though, is what is the problem you're trying to solve? It seems that nobody's actually asked that question, because if the answer is, well, we're actually trying to improve water quality, for example, does a consenting regime improve water quality, or is it just, well, we think it might, so we're going to make everybody jump through that hoop anyhow?
Well, one of the things that we've been discussing lately is in terms of those RMA changes, and we think that, we need to have some more harder edges in terms of what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do, and then have a discussion about the bit in the middle, because the utilisation of natural resources is the thing that we do, land, air and water. That's our job, and we think that there's too much grey in it, and that leads to litigation, it leads to uncertainty, it leads to increased consenting charges, and we, as I said to you before, we should be trusting our communities a lot more than what we are, to understand what they want. The water quality stuff and the nitrates and the stuff that we're dealing with, they're community issues. They're not a regional-wide issue. There are places that we need to concentrate in Canterbury to lift those things along. But when you put a national mandate out that says this is what it must look like, it takes the community out of it, and they feel disempowered and disenfranchised from the whole process. And
bloody pissed off. At the moment, we're doing, can I just say, down Otago, but this will be opening throughout New Zealand, Taranaki, Hawke's Bay, Auckland, Waikato as well, a series of land and water plans. And that requires everything to have a plan. It's a lot of bureaucrats telling a lot of people who are actually on the land, we need you to be better, but we also have a whole series of regulations we want to impose upon you as well. And again, the pushback coming from the rural folk and from those living in the provinces is, tell us the problem we want to solve. Whereas it seems the bureaucracies are saying, no, we've got this structure and we're now going to graft it upon, it might be Canterbury, Otago, all parts of Hawke's Bay or the Waikato.
Yeah, and look, this is my broken record on this. Since 2012 to 2018, we probably spent, between ourselves and the community, so between our ratepayers and the people that are affected by this planning regime that we went through, we've probably spent $120 million in Canterbury.
Bloody hell.
And so on top of that, then we've got freshwater farm planning coming in, and those rules around, and you'll know those rules about stock exclusion and pugging and and those sorts of things. We believe that to go through a process for that, a consenting process for that, we're probably up for another 40 for us, and I don't know what the community, but let's just say there's another 40 out there. So that's $200 million since 2012 to 2000, and whenever we get through this, 28 or 30, whenever it is, that's a lot of money to suck out of the community, because that's where it comes from. It comes from either people applying for consent or going through a planning process, or the ratepayers that are supporting the function that we must do. So you have to ask yourself whether we're going to legislate ourselves out of business. It's ridiculous.
Well, that's the other thing. It strikes me too. NIWA publish, and you will have in your region as well, all throughout New Zealand, swimming spots. The quality of water in swimming spots. At the moment, you can't swim on half of the beaches in Auckland because there's raw sewage apparently being pumped out through there, and it isn't safe to either consume shellfish from them or to swim there. All these regulations over all this length of time, and yet we've still got basic infrastructure problems in this country. How? I don't get it.
It's amazing. If you want to start stirring that up again, that's the whole Three Waters debate, which was looked to ensure that drinking water was safe anywhere you went, and the next cab off the rank, if you like, was sewage, wastewater, and then the next one was stormwater. And so as a country, we need, and done massive programs of work. I mean, they're billions and billions of dollars worth of work. And, the TAs have pushed back on that and said, look, we don't want that. We don't want that mandated process. And, we're still going to have the problem.
Yep.
So what are we going to do to solve the problem? And where are you going to get money from?
Yeah.
We've got a lot of people and TAs that are telling me when I speak to them, they've got no ability to borrow anymore because they're at their debt ceiling. So the country's in a lot of trouble in terms of the things that they want, and especially what you just said. This is I saw a thing on the TV where the people going into Queenstown, they said, do you realise, tourists, do you realise you have to boil your water down here? And they were just amazed.